Hello, everybody, and welcome to Shuranigans. My name is Colin Shuran, and I'm here to explore the lives of extraordinary people and topics. And on today's show, we have one of my favorite people in the world, Jon Gray. Jon is an author of written stories and poems. He's also a songwriter, he's an entertainer, and he's just a man of many talents. One of the coolest things he's done, in my opinion, he co-wrote and co-published country music star Ray Price's final album, some music on there called Beauty Is. He also hosts his own TV show called Just Plain Living, and you've done that for over 3 decades. Is that correct?
Close,
Okay.
yes.
And we'll get into that a little bit more. But yeah, I'm so glad you're here. So glad we can have this conversation. I've known you for such a long time, but I'm so glad that you can be a guest.
I've known you since you were born.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, I wanted to start with that talent thing. You are definitely a man of many talents.
Colin, what I'd like to do first is I'd like to tell your audience how appreciative I am that you've asked me to be part of your podcast. You know, ladies and gentlemen, this young man is one of the most talented people I've run across in a long time, and he's one of those folks who has a vision and the courage. It's very difficult to have creative courage when you're young because it usually doesn't pay much. But that's where the superstars come from, the people who see the light and chase the light, and no matter what the cost. And Colin is doing that in many, many ways in his life. And as a creative myself and a promoter of creative people, he's one of my young superheroes. And I'm just very flattered that he's asked me to be part of his journey by being part of this podcast.
I really appreciate that. For those listening, I didn't pay him to say that, so don't worry. But
creativity usually doesn't pay anything, Colin.
Good point. But no, I figured I would ask you to be on the show because you've helped me in my creative process, and I'm very honored that I could have been part of your journey, and now you're a part of mine.
That's right.
But speaking of the creative process, you really have seemed to have been able to do it all. You've pursued many talents, many interests, many passions, and I'm kind of trying to figure out the same thing. So what is your secret to pursuing many passions and talents while staying focused on other things such as life for general sense?
Well, I became a friend of a gentleman that was one of my mentors by the name of Teddy Bart. And Teddy Bart was one of the people in Nashville. He had the noon show. He was a musician that came from some up north and moved to Nashville. Great piano player. And when I was young, he used to come around the towns and play and sing. But he was more than that. And toward the latter part of his life, he was probably the number one call to talk about political things. He was a political analyst, and he was very good at doing what he did. Matter of fact, he was so good it took me a long time to figure out whether he was a Democrat or Republican, and I still don't know because he interviewed all those people, and he had to find a way to walk the middle and not alienate anybody from either side. And toward the end of his career, he did a blog every week, and it was about creativity. And one of the things he did was he was giving creative people instructions on how to survive trying to be creative, because your family's going to tell you, well, when you're going to get a real job. And your friends are going to go off and they're going to do things, and all of a sudden they're going to be driving a better car than you possibly, and getting married and buying a house and doing what normal people in our society do. Creatives don't do that. Creatives make a choice to follow a dream. And it's very difficult to do because a lot of times when you need to be at work, that's when you also need to be at a casting call or a film festival to show your newest product or your newest journey that you're on. And the workspace is not always real comfortable with that. And in a lot of places like Nashville or like LA, where there are a lot of creatives, society has to help this process by providing job placement that has latitude to where you can tell your boss, oh, I've got to go. I'm being asked to cast for a part in a movie, and I need to be off Monday, Tuesday to do that. And the people around you recognize the fact that you're a good person, you're a good worker, but you have another dream. And following that dream is a very difficult course. It's a very difficult path. And a lot of times it's a very lonely path. And the beauty of it all is what you find on that path. It's not always the destination. I'm 72 years old right now, and I look back and I keep thinking, when's the other shoe gonna drop? When's that next big thing gonna happen? And then I look back at my life and I look at all the people I've talked with. And I spent an afternoon with Vern Gosdin, who sang I think the greatest country song ever. A lot of people think it was the George Jones song, but to me it's Chiseled in Stone. And if you don't know Chiseled in Stone, go find it and listen to it, and you'll realize it's talking about you don't know lonely till it's chiseled in stone. And a lot of people don't realize that's a gravestone. And so I spent an afternoon with this guy, and when I was young, and as I look back, how wonderful was that? The beauty and the magic of a creative life is on the journey. It's not the destination. There's never enough money, or there's never enough gadgets that they can hand you to equal the payment that you get in life by the journey you're on and being a creative person, and the other creative people that you meet with and share ideas with, because their minds work differently than normal folks, and the spark that you get from each other that lights that next match, that lights the next fire in your life and your journey along a creative path. You never know where that's going to happen or how simple a fact that makes it happen for you. And that's one of the toughest parts of leading a creative life, is the nerve and the stay-to-itness to show up every day and search for your dream. And you're at the beginning of that path. And I just want to let you and other young creative people know that, we old cats are out there to support you, because we've walked in the same path, some to better success than others. But, when can I tell a little story right now? Is
Sure,
that okay
absolutely.
with you? When I found out that I was going to have the title cut on Ray Price's last album, of course, I thought, this can't be true. The song I'd written 20 years before for my wife on our 19th wedding anniversary, and it had been turned down by everybody in Nashville. And matter of fact, they even wrote a song about it called Rejected one time. But it's a pretty good song. Sang it myself to where it sounded like it needed to be rejected, as a matter of fact. I had a friend. Still have a friend. He's still a friend. Steve Brewster. And Steve Brewster is from Tullahoma, raised in Tullahoma, and is one of the most dynamic called-for drummers in the United States of America. He's played with everybody from Michael W. Smith, Prince's sound crew, Michael Jackson's light crew. He's played with Katera, who was the leader of the band Chicago. He just got through playing on an album with Rory and Joy, the lady that died, the country act. and he played on this album, and it was a duet album, and Dolly was on it, and Vince Gill, and Trisha Yearwood, and Alison Krauss, and Stevie played drums on all of it. He has his own studio. When he found out that I had received the honor of being on the Ray Price album, he called me from Nashville and he said, "I want to come to Tullahoma and take you to lunch." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Well, I just hadn't talked to you in a while." And he came down and we went to London's and got a burger. And I said, "What are you doing here?" And he said, "I realized that probably nobody in Tullahoma would understand how important that what's happened to you, how important a thing it is. It's not monetarily important. It might be, it might end up, you never know, but the validation of having one of the greatest country singers ever to live to pick your song as the title cut to the last album he would ever do is monstrous." And he said, "I know that nobody would understand it, but I get it. And I wanted you to know that, and I wanted to tell you how proud I am of you." And so that's where the payoff comes from in a creative life. Now, some people are very fortunate and make huge sums of money, but that's probably 2%. The other 98% of us do it because we can't do anything else. We have to do it. If you're a writer, you have to write. If you're a singer, you have to sing. If you're not doing it, you're not you. And a lot of times life gets in the way because you do have a family and you do end up with kids and you do end up with a job because you need cars and houses and clothes. But it never completely kills that creative spirit. It's always with you, and you'll always do it, maybe in small doses, but you'll never give it up. And then at one point, like me, at 70 plus years old, life's not in the way anymore. I get to do what I want to, and I'm doing everything from art to singing to writing, publishing. I'd like to dance, but I don't dance quite as much. Hand me that piece of paper with a paper clip right there. I write a little book. I was in a group of poets called the Not Yet Dead Poet Society, and one of the ladies came in one day and she said she was real happy, and I said, "What are you so happy about?" And she said, "Oh, I write haiku." And I was published in a haiku book, and I thought, well, I don't know what haiku is. And I said, "What is that?" And she said, "Well, it's Japanese poetry, and it's 3 syllables, 5 syllables, 3 syllables, or 5, 7, 5." And she said, "No rhyme, or it can have rhyme, doesn't need rhyme, and no title." And so I thought, well, that's everything needs a title. And I've never been much one to follow rules anyway. So that night I started my own form of literature called Low-Koo, Lowkoo, which also could pronounce Low-Koo, which is what I am from time to time, Low-Koo. So this is one talking about dancing and talking about other things that you do. You've finished your chores, successful or not. The empty hook book searched. Nothing is left. Every canvas holds paint. Each horse is in its stall. You peek around the corner expecting nothing at all, and there waiting impatiently is the quick step. Well, the quick step is a ballroom dance that's done very fast, and I've always looked at it my whole life, and I thought, man, I would love to do that, and I never have done it. So now as I'm working my way through the disciplines of creativity, and I just like I said, well, let's see, I've done the art, I've done the writing, I've done the singing. Well, I'm finished, and I turn back and look around, and there's the quick step back there going, "Oh, no, you're not through yet. Come here. We're going to do this." Yeah. And so that's the beauty of creativity is having an opportunity to experience all aspects of creative life. There's so many, and there's so many things you can do that might seem small. I mean, if you think they're small, look at the credits behind a movie and see how many people are involved in the creative side of producing a movie. And you'll realize that there are many, many, many people working in the creative world.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I am a firm believer that the creative journey never ends. Obviously, I'm still young to really understand that, but from what I gather from what you said is you're still on your creative journey.
Brand new every day. It's sort of like when you write a song or when you find something, that nugget. And one thing I'll tell all of you in a creative way, that live in a creative way, you cannot read too much. And you cannot watch too many movies, and you cannot listen to too much music, because you'll be watching something that you've seen, maybe a movie that you love that you've seen 50 times before, and all of a sudden you'll hear something that's different, that strikes your mind differently, maybe just that time because your mind's open to that. And there's your next song title. Those two words. I was watching a movie one night, and it was about now people drive cars and they have these car races that it's not about speed, it's about getting to this point and that point. I forget what you call them. And, you get to that point and you got so many minutes to get to the next little town and, pick up a flag or get a check or whatever. And they were doing this with horses back in the old Wild West, a black and white movie. And these guys are all riding as hard as they can ride, and dust is flying everywhere. And they get to the next town, and all these cowboys are soaking wet with sweat and dust and stuff. And behind them in rides this guy on this white horse, and he looks like he just came out of GQ. He ain't got a drop of sweat on him. And he's in the race too, but he's just chill about it, So he goes, they all in the bar, and Shelley West was the actress that was playing the part, has one of those little fringy bar girl suits on, and she sees him, comes running across the room, jumps up, wraps her legs around him and hugs him. And the camera shows his face, and he looks at the camera and says, "I've forgotten just how good a bad woman feels." And so the next day I wrote the song, I'm a good judge of bad women.
Wow. So
you never know where that little acorn that sprouts up an oak tree is going to come from.
Right.
Literature is full of it. And every emotion has been written about and talked about for thousands of years. There is no new emotion. There's just new ways of expressing how that emotion affects people. And so as you read the masters and you read books that you think, there's no reason I want to read that, but you'll find something. You'll find that little nugget, and always be searching for it, because it's like do you like steak?
Oh, yeah.
Love steak.
Oh, love it, yeah.
Love steak. Isn't a steak dinner a great thing to have?
It is.
When you get finished with it, sometimes don't you wish you'd never taken the first bite where you could eat it all over again?
Right. Or just keep going all night.
But you can't.
Right.
Because you're full or it's gone. A lot of times when you have an idea, a really good idea that you work with, it's kind of sad sometimes when it's over. Because you sooner or later you have to finish. Another thing that a lot of creatives have a problem with is turning something loose. Is it good enough? I've known artists to do that who the painting's finished, is beautiful to everybody else but them, and then they want to go back and start painting on it again.
I'm going to interject real quick with that. I think personally, to me, that's because, and there's a million different answers to this, but I feel like artists get scared because they're afraid people won't understand them. and people won't understand their art. So they get in their head and they kind of think, oh, I'm trying to get my audience to understand, when really I'm just trying to understand myself. So can you add to that? Maybe.
Yes, I can.
What is something that people misunderstand about you and maybe your art?
The thing that you've got to do is don't care. This book of mine, this Low-Koo book, there's stuff in there that people won't understand at all. Because what I did was the first morning I woke up and I've always been very fortunate from the time I was young that the space between sleep and wake, there's this time in there that's magic to me. And I've always paid attention to what happens there. And most of the time, what happens in there, sometime during my day, I can see that little piece of information showing up. And so for the first 30 days, every morning when I wake up, the first thing that came into my mind, I'd write this Low-Koo down, and I didn't edit it. A lot of times people do something and they think it's not good enough, and they work on it to the point that they ruin what they did to start off with, which was a free thought. And then all of a sudden, your free thought, which is beautiful and floating like a butterfly in the breeze, when you get through with it, you put wooden wings on it because everybody thinks things need to be made out of wood, and you paint it 3 or 4 colors because somebody said, oh, well, that's the color of the month. And when you're through with it, pleasing everyone else but yourself, this beautiful inspiration of yours doesn't exist anymore. So you can't worry about what they think. They either will or won't like it. It doesn't make any difference. It's what makes you happy. Because there will be people out there who will get it. And the first Low-Koo I wrote was down a thread seldom stretched. A red-lipped hummingbird pulled up the socks inside her blue suede shoes. The color purple. Whoopee. Now, you get it?
I have to be honest. I'm
red
not
lips,
sure.
one end of the hummingbird, blue shoes at the bottom. The mix between red and blue are socks that are purple. The color purple.
Oh, okay.
Whoopi Goldberg was the star and won an Academy Award for the color purple.
Right. Okay.
So
yeah.
they've turned into word puzzles, and will everybody understand that? No.
No.
But the ones who do see the magic in it. Some of them aren't quite that difficult, but so they ended up being kind of like word puzzles. And my mother used to. I woke up one morning and there was in my eyes vision was a muffin top with blue circles on it. And so I wrote, the muffin top looks like a blueberry muffin. I like burnt toast best buttered. Because my mother was a great cook and she burnt the toast all the time. And I didn't know you didn't have to scrape toast before you butter it till I was 20-something years old. Nobody will get that but me.
Right.
But let them think about it, because the next one might be very obvious. But don't sacrifice what makes you happy. Don't ever let anybody else, much less a dollar bill, determine your happiness. Ever. You're the only one that can make you happy.
That's really profound and really deep, and I have to say I totally agree with that. It's one of those things that is, I think art and creativity can be scary sometimes because you don't know what's going to come next. Like you said earlier at the beginning of this podcast, you said with creativity there's no money or something like that. That's scary too, because as a human you still have to live, you have to survive.
Yeah.
But I definitely think that even when I'm working on something, a creative piece, and I'm sure you go through the same thing, you're almost scared in a way because you have a million different questions in your head. Are people going to like this? Am I putting 100% of my effort into this? Stuff like that. And I think that's a challenge.
And there's and Colin, there's a fortunate few, and people think, oh, well, that just happened overnight. Nothing happens overnight. Just because you see, like last night, Luke Combs was Entertainer of the Year, and some people don't even know his name. Oh, that's overnight success. No, it's not. He's been playing in bars and honky tonks and on little stages outside his high school in a park. Dustin Lynch. I've got video of Dustin Lynch down at the Rocket Park down here by the high school when he had a little band in high school called 13 Rain playing concerts down there. And he's always been quite philanthropic because he'd come on our television show and we'd promote because the money was going to some cause. And no, those people don't become successful overnight. They work and they practice and they hone their skill. Very few of them. And you say like Andy Warhol. Well, here's a guy who paints a Campbell's soup can and it's worth, $15 million? But to get to that point, he lived in a loft with some people in New York and they lived like vagrants for years, being artists. And Guy Clark and Townes Van Zandt and some of those folks who are writers that people, John Prine. John Prine, if you don't listen to John Prine, first time you listen to John Prine, you think, I don't get it. Well, he's a storyteller. He's a life lesson builder. Is that what the business wants? No. The business doesn't love him. The fans love him. And a chosen few of those people are fortunate to get that lick early, which allows them to go forward and hone their creativity in a more comfortable style than most people get to. That's the 2-3%. The rest of us, we're doing it for one reason and one reason only, is it makes us happy. And we can't live without it.
I absolutely agree. I think art really fuels artists. I know that sounds kind of cliche, but it really fuels artists. So I'm wondering about you. What makes you want to get out of bed in the mornings? I'm sure it has to do with something creative, but you mentioned there's this magic hour in between sleep and when you wake. What makes you want to get out of bed?
Get out of bed? I can't accomplish anything in bed. I wish that we didn't have to go to bed. I'm one of those people that I'd like to be where I never had to go to sleep at all. And I don't sleep very long. I was to support my family through the years when my son Jacob was going through school, and not just my son, our son Jacob, my wife Fran. At some points I never had a great big high dollar job. I worked 2 and 3 jobs, and I drove to Nashville every morning because I was in the construction business. And I would be up there on a job site by 7 o'clock in the morning. If I didn't leave till home by 5, I didn't get there on time. So I was up 4 o'clock in the morning. And so I got used to living on 5-6 hours of sleep. Now, if I sleep any longer than that, I can't, basically, because if I wake up, then my mind starts working. And I just soon get up and get out of bed and start doing something because I'm miserable in bed. So I'm always looking, and my wife, it's kind of funny. She likes to spend some time in bed in the morning, and I wake up, and I'm singing a song and making up nonsense and picking at her and kidding her, and she's going, "Will you leave me alone?" Morning's beautiful to me. I love to watch the sun come up. I wrote a song about the commuters and driving into Nashville, and the red ants, like the taillights look like red ants marching in the night. The closer you get to Nashville, the more the red ants come into the interstate. And it's just refreshing. It's a brand new day. I wake up every morning like a baby bird hunting a new worm, you know. And I mean, what's out there today? Something's out there today. I got to find it. I don't know what it's going to be. I'm going to be happy about it, whatever it is. And if it's a problem, well, we'll deal with it, and then we'll put it to bed. A lot of people carry stuff around too long. You know, when you do go to sleep, there's no reason not to go to sleep because you're worried about something, because you can't do anything about it in the middle of the night. You know, the next morning it's either going to still be there or it's going to be gone. You know, you can't, if you spend too much time thinking about the past and worrying about the future, you never get anything done today. Live one day at a time, because that's all you can affect. You're not guaranteed anything else. And so in that, living that day, be sure that you make yourself happy in doing it. Make it a good day. Oh, what was that guy's name? Used to be on the radio. It'll come to me in a minute. But he'd have the little 2 or 3 minute deal on the radio, and at the end of each one of his broadcasts, Paul Harvey, he wouldn't say have a good day. He would say make it a good day. It's up to you whether you have a good day or not. Not anybody else, not your boss. Oh, they can throw bricks at you and throw stones in the way, but you can either accept the hit, the knock, or you can just step over it and make your day a good day. And most of the time you can do that by sharing something with other people that helps their day be a little bit better than it might be.
Yeah. So, and when you share things, would you call that your superpower? To make other people happy, sharing art, making people smile, making people feel something.
That's my mission in life. I love to talk to people. My wife works with Alzheimer's and dementia as her job, and I heard something on the Today Show one day that said the best thing you can do for your brain health is to talk with strangers. And think about it. Why is that so? Well, if you're talking with your friends, you know the stories. You can zone out. You can zone out and come back in 5 minutes later and pick right back up. You know who they had a date with last weekend and whether they got a new guitar, or you're a drummer, whether they found a new kind of drum head that sounds better. You know that stuff. So you really don't have to pay attention. When you talk with a stranger, if you don't pay attention, you make a fool out of yourself. It makes your brain work. And so I like going in a gas station. The gas station, I call it the 3-star up here across from the Lutheran Church, Trinity, up there. And a lot of people are going to Jack Daniels.
Right.
We'll stop in there and get gas or a biscuit and stuff. And sometimes I'll go up in there and stand around and just see somebody I don't know and start a conversation. And it's amazing how much fun you can have and how much you can learn by visiting with people that you don't know. And at the end of the day, they'll say, man, this is a friendly place. You know, we really like coming to Middle Tennessee because it's so friendly here. Well, we're the ones that make it friendly. But we're also learning, and we're also going to class on making our brain operate stronger and better, because it's a muscle and it's exercise. And instead of just laying there going, I've heard that before. Yeah, I know. You got new tires on your truck, and okay. So flex yourself. You know, reach, grab, look at something that you think there's no way in the world I can do that, and do it. And be persistent. I tell the young people who come, I talk with our television network, we talk to a lot of young people and we present news and stuff like that. And communications, and I talk to them about communications, and put your cell phone in a box, folks. I mean, do you really have to have that thing on you all the time? You're going to be, at some point, if you're fortunate, you're going to be in the Bat Tower in Nashville on the 20th floor, sitting in front of somebody with a $4,000 Armani suit on, and you don't even know how to read their eyes. You don't know what facial and voice inflections, because you don't want to talk to anybody. You want to text them, because texting gives you an opportunity to research your answer. We're becoming less and less human and more machine. And that is so cold. And we are so warm and beautiful. We're created of flesh and blood, warm blood. 98.6 is what we are. Why make it cold? Reach out and touch someone. Be somebody that pats people. Be somebody that makes people smile. It's what we're supposed to be about, caring for one another, not the hate that's going on right now in our country. And it's okay to disagree with somebody. It's okay to disagree with your boss. Now, he's your boss, and you don't smart off to him or her. But you can disagree respectfully and should be able to do that without someone hating you because you don't agree with them. The world is about more than just me. It's about us. And the sooner we remember that, we knew it. We knew it years ago when we knew who our neighbors were. And we had little cul-de-sac meetings in the neighborhood where everybody brought picnic and we'd just sit out in the street and talk and visit. We knew it and we understood it. But somewhere along the line, we've forgotten how to care for one another. And that's what we're here for, each other. We're all part of the same deal. So respect and kindness, man. And never quit fighting for something you believe. And because guess what? The minute you stop is the next step you take might have been the guy or girl that you meet that will make your dream come true. Don't let anybody keep you from following your dream, and particularly not for $1.
Wow. Yeah. And have you always followed your dream? Is what you have done?
Well, I could. You have to be realistic and you have to live a life.
Mm-hmm.
But
are you doing now what you thought you were going to do when you were a kid?
Am I doing now what I thought I would do when I was a kid? I wrote my first song when I was 12. And did I have a clue about that? No. I know I enjoyed doing it. You look behind me on a shelf behind me right now. There is a letter from Tullahoma High School that I unearthed where it was the Quillen Scroll. And little did I know that almost 60 years ago, I had a clue of what I would end up loving for the rest of my life, and that's writing. I was on the paper. I was a football player. I was an athlete. That was my biggest, sports, golf, football, basketball. I wasn't much of a baseball player. And of course, we didn't have soccer and tennis and volleyball and that kind of stuff much. And then I find this, and in the middle of all that sports stuff and those letters, in between a golf letter and a basketball letter, I pull out that 3 years I was lettered at Tullahoma High School for Quillen Scroll. And that was about my love for writing I didn't even think about at that point. But if I didn't have to do it because my mind was making me do it, why in the world would I have that? Why did I keep it? Because somewhere deep in my heart and in my mind, I knew that before it was all said and done, that would be the love of my life.
So what was your aha moment? When did it click for you?
I don't know if I ever, I don't know, I've just always sort of been crazy, clown. I mean, like I say, I'm a poet, I'm a storyteller. My son had an earache when he was about 5 years old, and I laid down in the bed and made up a story about Buford the Barkless Bulldog, and because he was hurting, and I rhymed it 54 line verses, and I told it to him, and he went to sleep. It's what I was trying to accomplish. And 3 or 4 days later, I thought, man, that was a good story. And so I went back and revisited it and wrote a book about Buford the Barkless Bulldog. And it's a great kid's story. It's a great good story for anybody. My stories and stuff are usually pretty odd in that I'm always protective of the underdog. I'm always protective of the kid who gets roughed up a little bit. Buford can't bark, and at the end of the story, he's the only one of his family that couldn't bark, and he's the biggest of them all. And at the end of the story, he was the hero, not in spite of the fact that he couldn't bark, but because of the fact that he couldn't bark. Because the mountain lion couldn't hear him barking as he was coming after him. And the mountain lion says, dogs always give themselves away. They bark and make all kinds of noise. Buford could open his mouth and try to bark. Nothing came out. So it wasn't in spite of an infirmary that he was a hero, but because of an infirmary that he ended up being a hero. I love those kind of twists and stuff in what I write. And I'm always protective of those, the underdog. I write, Fran likes me to tell her stories, and I'll say something like, if I could say to you right now, give me something, anything, and I can go.
You want to try that?
And will it be pretty? Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But she'll say, "Tell me a story," and all of a sudden I'll think about a chipmunk out in the yard, and so it's Charlie the chipmunk. We have two moles that live under the cedar tree called Freddie and Fontaine, and I tell stories about Freddie and Fontaine and different. Uncle Remus, one of the first movies I saw was The Song of the South. And I took Claudia Copeland, who was my girlfriend we were either 4.5 or 5. We went to the Marshall Theater and saw Song of the South, and Uncle Remus telling the stories about Br'er Rabbit and all that. And that stuff to me was just, it was real. It is real. Those little animals, they have some way of talking with each other, and I just love to be able to understand. I use animals a lot because I like animals. My dad told me one time, if you want to learn how to live, pay attention to animals and small children, and you'll live a happy life. And he was a military guy, World War II bomber pilot, but he paid attention to animals and small children.
Well, I want to test your ability real quick. I'm going to give you an animal.
Boy, I have put myself in a position.
Yeah. Open invitation. But I want to give you an animal.
All right.
And I'm going to give you like a minute, 2 minutes, and I want you to just tell a story about that animal. All right?
All right.
My favorite animal in the world, and I want you to tell a story about this animal. It's a ring-tailed lemur.
A what?
A ring-tailed lemur. It's a monkey. It's got a long tail, beautiful eyes.
Ring-tailed
lemur.
Lemur. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Where do they live?
I think
South America?
Madagascar area.
Madagascar.
So.
Yeah. Okay. It was a Monday morning. It was early, and Marco had found his way out of the woods and was coming toward town. And Marco was a strange young monkey. He loved to watch people as much as people love to watch animals. So Marco would come to town and climb up in a tree next to the houses, and it was amazing how much he had learned from the people. And he was taken by their clothes that they would wear. And in Madagascar, some of the spice trade and the cloth trade came through there, and the dyes and the different thing they use in the silks. And he would take little scraps, and he would take them back. If there was a scrap fell off of a wagon, he would take them back to his tree at night, and he would take needles off of the tree or pine or whatever it is, pieces of bark, and he'd sew these little scraps together. And he had a beautiful vest that was almost like Dolly Parton's coat of many colors that he wore. And he had a little hat that he'd made and some silk shoes that he would wear. So he was probably the coolest dressed lemur in Madagascar. And his one thing that he watched for was Margaret, because Margaret had grown up in a grove next to him, and one day she disappeared. And he didn't understand what happened to Margaret until he went to town, and he was looking in past, curtains were flowing out of one of the high windows in one of the buildings, and they were silk, and they were a tan, so it was really hard to tell because they were almost just the same color of the building. And all of a sudden the wind would catch them and they would flow. And one day he was looking, and he was feeling the breeze blow across his face and looking at the building, and he was in the shade, and he'd just gotten through eating some nuts that he had found that had fallen off of a wagon. You know, he was quite the little pickpocket, Marco was, but he would also pick out of bags on carts as the tradespeople were coming through to sell their trades at the square. And so he had some nuts, and he had just gotten through dining on them, and he looked over and he caught the curtains blowing, and there was Margaret inside. And he wept. She was in a cage, and he didn't know what he could do. And so every day after that, he went to town, and he climbed up the same tree and on the same wall, and he started figuring out, how will I ever be able to get to Margaret and get her out of there and bring her back where she belongs? So as he moved about the town, he realized how the walls were built and where the trees were, where he could make his way over to the building, and he did. And finally, one day when the wind blowed and the curtains blew open, he stuck his head through the window. And he had his little vest on and his little hat on, and Margaret was in the cage, and she looked, and she went, "Marco, is that you?" "Yes, Margaret. Be quiet. Be very, very quiet. I'm here to save you, but I don't know how." And she said, "Oh, thank you, Marco. I've just been in prison in this cage, and I miss my family. And I miss you because I used to enjoy watching you swing on your beautiful tail in the trees. Oh, what a gorgeous tail it is. And by the way, where did you get that nice vest you're wearing?" And he said, "When I get you out of there, Margaret, I'll make one for you." And she said, "I hear something. You better leave. I think my people are coming." And so he snuck back down the wall, and that night he went back to his tree, and he thought only of Margaret, and he hung by his tail just for her, and he swung back and forth, putting together a plan. And so he went to town that next day, and he thought, I like nuts, and I eat these nuts, and how do I crack these nuts? How do I get the nuts out of the shell? I can't remember how I get the nuts out of the shell. Oh, I remember. I lay them under the wheels of the wagon, and then when the wagon rolls over them, it cracks the shell. So he thought, I wonder if I could use that on the cage. So he carries some nuts up to the cage, goes in, finds Margaret, nobody's there, and he sneaks in, and he has these almost like a hazelnut with a hard shell, and he finds some small ones, and he puts them right at the joint of the door of the cage. And she said, "Marco, what are you doing? What are you doing?" "Shh, I'm going to get you out of there." And so he puts the nuts there, and he goes outside, and he hides around the corner. And she said, leave, quick, my people are coming. They're coming to feed me, and I hate what they feed me. And so they come in and they open the cage door. Well, they didn't realize when they did that, the pressure of opening it against the little nuts that he put there sprung the latch. And so they threw her food down and just slammed the door. Well, when they slammed it, it was not in a line, so it just bounced. And when he heard it bounce, Marco, and heard the door, big door slam, Marco sticks his head in and he smiles real big. He had kind of dirty looking teeth because monkeys have dirty teeth. I mean, they're not clean teeth people. They don't brush, they eat. And so he smiled in his big teeth, and she looked back at him and he said, "Push on the door." She said, "What?" "Push on the door." And she pushed on the door and it sprang open. And she smiled. And he ran into the room and she jumped down out of the cage and they hugged each other and out the window they went and the wind blew and the silk just fluttered as they ran down the wall from one tree to the next, down the last tree, into the sand, off into the woods. And that night, Marco and Margaret swang together, tails in the same tree, rocking back and forth in the breeze.
Wow. Yeah,
Is that okay?
No, that was amazing. You wrote a whole children's book in these 3 to 5 minutes or whatever. That that was awesome. Where does
I don't know.
You just go?
It just shows up.
It just shows up.
I'll tell stories. I wish sometimes technology frustrates me, but I wish sometimes that we were further enough along where I could have a port. What do you have, those thumb drive?
Yeah.
I'd like to be able to stick a thumb drive in my brain because I'll tell Fran a story and she'll say, "Well, you need to tell so-and-so that story." And I said, "I'll never remember it." "Oh, you've got to remember it. You told her." I said, "It just goes through. It's a gift that's there for a moment and then it's gone. I'll never remember again. Oh, I can remember the characters, but I can't remember what takes me from one thing to the next. It's like it happens and then it's gone. And if you were fortunate enough to be there for it, good for you. If you weren't, I might get close again, but it might not be. It might be worse. It might be better. Who knows? But it's fun.
Oh, absolutely. I had fun listening to that story. Marco the monkey. I like
Marco and Margaret.
Yeah, I really
from Madagascar.
That's right. Yeah. Do you have a certain writing process when you sit down, or does it just all you just let it happen?
It's funny if I have an idea. I've got an idea right now of a song and a couple, and sometimes it's hard to know whether the word is going to be a chorus or if it's going to be a major theme that leads you to a chorus. Some people write music and then write music writers. A lot of them can't write the lyrics. I've got some lyrics that I've taken to some friends and say, "Hey, I need Elton John. I'm Bernie Tarpon. I need Elton John. Put me some music to this." Well, no, we usually write the music first, then write the words. Well, I'm a lyricist. I'm not I have 3 chords and a half on a good day. So, I write lyrically. Most anything that I write, even in poetry or lyrically, can be blues, jazz, country, whatever, because it's melodic. Stretch a word for phrasing, cut a word short for phrasing, get rid of a and, the, but, or add one. You can turn it into whatever you want. But a lot of times I'll take something and I'll go, okay, how am I gonna work this? And then you come up with some ideas. And then you just write them down. Write your ideas down. And I have folders that I have on all my songs. I'm a paper guy. One of these days when the computers all go away, I'll still have all my stuff. It's in filing cabinets. And, people say, "Are you worried about your copyrights and stuff like that. And I said, most real writers, the ones that are real writers, they don't want to steal anything from anybody else. They want to write their own stuff. And if somebody says, oh, I wrote that, well, I've got my lunch bag over here dated where I first wrote that, wrote that down in 1987 outside of a store in Winchester eating a bologna sandwich, dated and signed. Where's yours? Show me yours. Show me your lunch sack. Show me where you started creating this thing and tell me you did it before I did. I don't think I'd argue with anybody about it or not. Anyway, it's not all that's about money. And that's not the end game. It's satisfaction's the end game, and creativity and smile to hear you just watching your eyes when I told that story that's all the payment I'll ever need for that story. That's what it's all about is sharing your heart, your hope, your faith, your love for other people and other things. That's what makes us human, not machines and fancy stuff. It's the soft side of life is what makes us human, and that's what makes Tullahoma such an incredibly wonderful town. Is the soft side of Tullahoma, the Arts Center and the Science Center and South Jackson and the band and the singers, and it's the small businesses in this community who support all these wonderful things in our town that make it as unique as its name. I know that's a cliche, but Tullahoma is a very unique town. We're very fortunate because of the government, Arnold Center's presence here. We have a lot of very well-educated individuals living in this town, and they demand their children be educated properly. They have the proper cultural learning here in this town, and they invest in it to make sure that it happens. So very fortunate.
Yeah, and I definitely think what you were saying, there's a lot of beauty in being human and doing things without a computer.
Yeah.
I mean, just from meeting with you throughout my whole life, you've always got something to show me, physical, not on a computer, but you've always kept something, and there's something special about that. There's an attachment to it as opposed to a document on a computer. And there's real beauty in that. And speaking of beauty, that reminded me about Ray Price's album. How did that song, did you write it on paper and then all of a sudden that turned into that big opportunity for you?
I wrote that song. I listened to the radio a lot, and I was listening to, I think it was Patty Loveless sang the song, I'm gonna think about Elvis, something in the afternoon, I'm gonna think about Main Street and such, and thinking about anything but this guy. And so I thought, well, that's a listing song. That's all she's doing is listing stuff. And it has a hook to tie it all together. And so I thought, well, I'm going to write a listing song. And I started off with mountaintops, raindrops. Because I used to love to hike in the Smokies and to go up to the top of Mount LeConte or to the Chimneys and watch it rain, and you're up there and there's a little trickle of rain coming off the leaves, and then by the time you get to the bottom, it's the Roaring Fork, and how our river system and our water systems actually happen from nothing to rivers. And then I thought mountaintops, raindrops, snowflakes when they fall, a baby's cry, your hazel eyes, the night train's lonely call. And so I'm listing things. And that's all I was doing. And then when I got to the end, a baby's cry, your hazel eyes, night train's on it. Lightning strikes, my wild horses running free. And I'm thinking, okay, all of those things are love-hate things. Mountaintops. Well, if you're sitting on one watching the planes fly down in the valley, it's beautiful, but if you're in that plane and you hit one of them, it ain't too pretty. Raindrops beating on a window pane when you're laying in bed on a Saturday morning, wanting that when you're young and laying in bed and want that 30 more minutes sleep and you're listening, that's beautiful. But when they become a hurricane or a flood, it ain't so pretty. A baby's cry when your baby gets spanked the first time in the hospital when they're born and you hear them cry, it's the most wonderful sound in the world. But when you're on a 6-hour flight in an airplane and there's one behind you raising Cain, it's not too good. So all of these things are mixed. So it comes to me, beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. You know, you can love this stuff, you can hate this stuff. It depends on how you're looking at it. And I hold beauty every time I hold you. And that's how that whole song started, is as a listing song because Patti Loveless was singing about Elvis. And it ended up 20 years later being the title cut to Ray Price's final album. You just never know. You never know the path that stuff's going to go on.
Right. Do you mind singing a verse or two from it?
Huh? Oh no, I'm not going to do that.
No. I enjoy.
Beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder, and I hold beauty every time I hold you. With a love that only grows as it grows older, and the beauty of it all is forever. You'll be holding me too. Fine lines have traced sweet memories lightly on your face, and I don't care if your hair's not always right in place. I can see forever when I look into your eyes, and sometimes things that can't be seen is where real beauty lies. And that's it. Beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. And Vince Gill sings harmony with him on that song, and it was done at Ocean Way with a 24-piece orchestra that Bergen White, who is the biggest string arranger in Nashville, did the music. It's an incredible album, and Stephen Foster. Stephen Foster. One of his songs is on that album. So I mean, Stephen Foster. I'm on an album with Stephen Foster? Really? You know, Willie Nelson had a couple of songs on that album and different ones, and it's a great deal. I went to the Bluebird and sang there, and took my friend Don Jones, who's a upside-down left-handed guitar player who lives here in Tullahoma, and probably one of the greatest guitar players I've ever heard, went up and played with me. And Mandy Barnett was in the show with me, and different ones. And
would you consider that your most impressive win?
Huh?
Would you consider that like your most impressive win? Like this
win?
Is the moment?
Oh yeah, no, I don't have. There's nothing else I've done to compare with that. I've had probably 25, 30 cuts, but they're all on small stuff. A lot of it in Europe. You know, there's a lot of. I write old country music. Matter of fact, I just got through writing one called "I'm a Songwriter for Old Country Stars." You know, because the kind of songs I write aren't what's on drive time radio anymore. The drive time country music's more rappy.
Pop.
We're not telling stories anymore.
Right. Talking about trucks and girls. Beer.
Yeah. My truck. It's not about. And I'm a storyteller. John Prine was a storyteller. Guy Clark, Always Trust Your Cape. Townes Van Zandt. Chris Christopherson. Storytellers. We don't storytelling. We've gotten away from storytelling, and it's all business. It's big business,
right?
And you know they are not going to let. I'm outsider. You know, you're outside. You're the outsider. You're inside. Artists didn't used to write. George Strait, I don't think ever wrote a song. Frank Sinatra never wrote a song. Tony Bennett never wrote a song. Songwriters wrote songs. Marvin Hamlish and those people like that wrote songs. Well, artists figured out that there's money in it. So now artists write songs because they want that money. And I understand that. And the music business has a formula right now. And as long as fans keep listening and buying the formula, they have, if they need 20 of those songs by Monday, they've got 5 people in the room who can crank 20 of them out by Monday because it's just putting different words in the formula. as long as the fans will suck up and take it. You know, I got frustrated and I wrote a little song. I love Wizard of Oz. Great movie. I just love that movie. Somewhere Over the Rainbow is probably my most favorite song of ever. And I love the Cowardly Lion. And so I was mad at Nashville one day, and I wrote, if I were king of the forest, not duke, not earl, nor prince, I'd tear down the walls round Music City and put up a white picket fence. I'd take the gates they keep locked tight. I'd take the doors they keep locked tight. Turn them to gates that swing open both ways so anyone could walk right in and have a place to play. I know it's called the music business, but business can be so cold. The fans take what they are given, but they still search for the soul of the melodies wrapped around life where stories are still told. Camo clad, they search for the heart while the man still hunts for more gold. If I were king of the forest, not duke, not earl, nor prince, I'd howl, I'd croon. I'd howl, I'd croon. I'd yodel, I'd croon, I'd howl at the moon. And happy to have the chance to share the tales I've learned on life's trails. Hold every eye in the room with melodies good and lyrics understood and folks that can't happen too soon.
Wow. Yeah. I love
so
it.
Tell a story. You
I
know,
love
the,
it,
the
yeah.
fans are out here wanting stories, and the business is, you know, they're camo clad. They search for the heart while the man still hunts for more gold.
And I think that's spot on.
That's spot on, man.
Unfortunately, I think it should be the other way around, but
not as long as we keep listening to what the crap that they feed you.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at it through old eyes.
Mm-hmm.
You're young. I know it was said to me one time that Socrates, you know who Socrates was, said, you know, these damn youth are going to be the ruination of this world. What was that, about 5,000 years ago?
Right, yeah. Well, it seems like there's youth every day. So maybe he was right, actually.
Yeah, might be.
But no, to kind of wrap this episode up on the topic of storytelling, I remember going on your show, Just Plain Living, one day.
Yeah.
Which I was honored to be on your show, by the way, twice at this point.
You honored me by being there. You're an unbelievably talented young man.
Well, thank you. And being on that show the first time, one of my greatest honors is signing your guitar, first of all. Your acoustic guitar, you have guest sign. That was one of my first honors. But another honor that I'm not sure if you know that it was actually an honor, but you signed and gave me one of your poems you wrote, and I absolutely love that poem. It's called "A Wolf Is at the Door."
Yeah.
And if you have it, I want you to read it for the audience, and we can end it with that poem, because I absolutely love that poem, and I think about it a lot, actually. And I still have it. You signed it and dated it.
Well, you know, when I do that, and I don't know. Sometimes I do it, and I think, hey, you know, those all end up in the garbage somewhere. But I did wrote a lot of stuff, as most writers did during the Corona, and I call them all of my Corona collection. And I remember when the virus was first getting started, and a lot of folks were stranded, you know, and you're on an aircraft, or you're on a tour ship, or you're somewhere out of the country, and you can't get back home. And so this is what I wrote. An Afghan Ahmed asked the bartender Ed for another ale. The Russian Rasta passed out in her vodka. She's going to feel like hell. The Greek greets a giddy girl as she graces his glance with a grin. The Spaniard savors his sausage soup and a stein of studs, while Paul from Peru hoists a few pints with his buds. The rabbi roars, bartender, one more round for us all, even that frisky fat friar by the fire down the hall. The Scot blows his pipes for the loss of his wife to an Irish prick named Phil, as the innkeeper searches for a Frenchman who skipped out on his bill. The British cat is having a chat with a Swede slurping stew as some Muslims mingle modestly with curry-scented smiles. The road outside the tavern is empty for miles and miles. Americans, Germans, Japanese, and many more that roam found this safe sanctuary when they couldn't go back home. A crazy cluster of characters like I've never seen before. It's funny how we can all get along when a wolf is at the door.
I love the poem. And I want to thank you for coming on. Such an honor. What a great conversation. I learned so much just listening to you. And I'm sure you will inspire others who listen to this. So I really thank you and appreciate you for being on my show.
Well, I appreciate. I'm honored that you asked me to, and it's old cats sometimes talk a little more than they need to. But when you're looking toward the end instead of toward the climb, you think, man, I really need to share this. But does anybody care? Well, I don't really care whether they do or not. They're going to listen. I'm going to tell them anyway, because it's stuff that young people need to know is don't ever lose faith in yourself, in your dream, and never allow someone to define your happiness. Only you can define your own happiness. And go, my young friend, and reach for the stars and fly like an eagle in the night. I'm proud of you, and I respect you for what you do, and I know you'll be just fine.